Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Adobe Live. My name is Robert Ranitsky, and I will be your host for today's show. And I'm super excited to have a very exciting guest today, going by the name Charles Carter, who I just met virtually, at least. Didn't meet him in person. However, he seems very intriguing and like a very nice and likable guy, and also very knowledgeable about the things that he will talk about. Looking at his bio and his channel info on his fantastic YouTube channel, it says that Charles likes to travel, likes video and photography, as well as good food. So paired that with his love for motion pictures and moving images, this seems like a fun session that should be coming up in the next 60 or so minutes. So Charles, hello.
Hello. There's a lot of pressure on me now to provide a great stream. I hope I can live up to it.
No pressure. No, don't worry. So we have a lot of people queuing up in the chat. I see Sean, Gareth. Hello everyone. I also see Michelle. Tim is there. Wow. Hello, Tim. Caroline, Stuart, hello. It's all good to see you. Angus is here as well. And if you're joining in on YouTube, please do not forget to hop onto Behance, where there is the actual chat that we are reading, and I'm reading and I'm monitoring, and also will direct any questions towards Gareth if there are any. I also try to cover some of the questions while he is in the zone and doing his thing. So feel free to shoot out anything that you would like to ask us. And without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Charles. And maybe you can explain a little bit about what you do apart from the intro that I gave you, maybe something in your own words.
Of course. Yeah. So over the past 8 years, I primarily worked as a cinematographer and video editor. I spent a lot of that time traveling around, shooting some travel photography, landscapes, which is kind of how I got into the video as well. Working with brands, clients, influencers, all sorts of amazing people. And now I run my own creative agency. So I've been doing that for the past year or so. And yeah, I just do all sorts of editing, shooting, a lot of motion graphics over the past sort of 12 months. So a lot of my knowledge is kind of spread across a lot of the different Creative Cloud programs, but Premiere is kind of where I've started, and it's where a lot of my love lies. So yeah, I'm going to talk about that today. And we're going to take a look at some of the new workflow updates in Premiere Pro. So a lot of the new recent features that have been updated or added in. So there's a few of those. There's one big general update, which is that there's now unified update version numbers across all of the Creative Cloud suite, which might not seem big, but it's kind of super useful if you are using a lot of programs like myself. Like, I mean, if you look at my bottom bar here, you can see that's just a few of the Creative Cloud Suite programs that I use. I hope that's showing up on the screen share. And just means that they're all going to have the same number. So I think we're at 22.0 at the moment. So before it might have just been like a few behind, a few updated, a few ahead, a few behind. And it's just a bit confusing to know kind of where you were with your updates. And now obviously that's been fixed. So
no, when you would get asked which version do you use, you go like 22. Before it was like, all right, let me check it out. Where do I find it? It's kind of like
yeah. Well, you say I'm on the latest version, and you'd be like, what you mean this one? And like, oh wait, actually maybe I'm not. Whoops. So yeah, that's just a nice little general update. But in Premiere Pro, we have a few really cool features. So we've got the simplify sequence feature, which has been added in, which we'll go through shortly. There's also been some really awesome color management updates. So There's been some updates to the color space detection when you're importing and exporting footage, which we'll cover very briefly. And there's also been some improvements to the Lumetri panel and the color grading workflow. So we have made some changes to the vector scope, the YUV vector scope, and also the curves. So that's going to be fun. We're going to do that. I'm going to run through some of the color grading scopes and sort of give an explanation to how they work if you're not aware already. And then we'll do a little demonstration of how they work, actually grading some clips. And then finally, in Premiere Beta, there is the remix feature, which allows you to remix your audio clips and shorten or lengthen your music tracks to match the length of your sequence, which used to be available in Audition. It still is, but it was a bit more of a process to get that done. Now it's a simple button in Premiere. So we'll have a little rundown of that as well.
In Audition, I've used this feature about, I don't want to lie, maybe 4 or 5 times, but it was always between there was always months between that. So it was separate projects. And each time I was like, oh, let's do this remix. What was it again? I go in and I'm looking in the help file, like, okay, how do I activate it again? It was this. And it's not hidden, but it's like, if you don't use it on a regular basis. So it's a very welcome change to have that directly in Premiere Pro.
For sure. It takes a lot of steps out of the process as well. You're not having to open up an Audition file and create a new save. And then, I mean, we'll go through it. But so
can you? I know we pre session we talked about your reel. I don't know how long it is, but maybe you can fire it up so people can actually see some of your wonderful moving images that you captured.
Sure. Let me just. This is an unfinished reel, so it's
I love unfinished reels. Every reel is unfinished.
Let me quickly see if I can open it up. Here we go. Show reel. We'll open this up. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't load very fast, then we might have to give it a skip, because this version here has been chopped up a bit and messed up, so that we can use the simplify sequence tool on it. So let's see if this version here is at all put together. Here we go. We have a somewhat half prepared reel. I can, here we go. Oh. I'll tell you what we'll do. We have a Vimeo here, and I'm pretty sure it's been uploaded to Vimeo. Here we go. Can that be full screen?
I think there's a button once it's loaded.
Is there? Maybe not. We'll do the miniature version.
Oh man, that's beautiful. I love it. I love the edit, love the visuals, love the music especially a lot as well. it feels so lighthearted, and it's not like the typical drum and bass, like oof, oof,
Yeah. I found a lot of them have a lot of very aggressive, loud music, so I thought I'd try something a little bit different.
So there's been a few comments piling up, obviously very positive ones. People love it. Great show, really very impressive. That's what Caroline says. Very nice. Wow, everyone really appreciates what you are showing. There were some questions. The first one was by Gareth. He was asking if you did Charlie shoot everything that you just showed that was seen. So was it all?
No.
filmed?
So I would say 80% of it is mine, and then others are projects that I've worked on or assisted on. So some of the headshots, the quick, snappy headshots, that was a project that I worked on, but I didn't actually shoot those shots. Some of the motion graphics projects were joint projects with art directors. So it's a project that I either produced or assisted on as well. So worked as part of a team. And then, but I think for the most part, all of the drone shots, so these shots here, I didn't set up the lighting and stuff, but I didn't really shoot those. But yeah, for the most, I'd say like 90% of it, 95% is projects that I've worked on myself and shot, or yeah.
Oh, and Stuart asks if how does Charlie edit? Does he start with a click track first to tie the music and edit slices, or what is your process regarding that?
Oh, my process. I love to talk about that. So
I figured.
for me, it's more about the assembly. And yeah, I mean, it depends really. It depends if I'm making a video because I've heard a piece of music that I like and I want to make something for it, in which case I will sort of add markers to the audio and then fit the clips in. But if I've shot something, the music is generally one of the last steps after sort of bringing all the clips in, cutting them down to select and the sections that I want. And then I might bring the music in and then try and organize the clips above it to sort of make sense and give them an order. But yeah, generally it's all about importing, making those selects and cutting away, like trimming away the fat, and then having a good look at what I've got left and what I can do with it to begin.
How do you feel about editing? I mean, obviously you edited your reel, right? Because like in one of the previous shows, I don't know if it was on the UK stream or on the German stream, I mentioned multiple times that, you know, for my personal reel, which is very motion graphics heavy, because that's what I do mostly. For the last few years, I've let it be edited by someone else that is an actual editor and also one of my best friends. But he knows me, he knows my work, and him being not me makes it obviously a much more objective. Not objective. Is that the right word? Like so basically he always says kill your darlings, like lose work that is maybe not as good as maybe other work, but because it's so personal to you, because it has some emotional, I don't know, it makes sense emotionally because it was your first drone shot or it was your first 3D animation or whatever. And although it might not be really bad, but you certainly might have better stuff in there, but you still cannot get rid of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do you tackle that?
Like cutting it down. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. This is one of my biggest problems, I think. And it comes across in a lot of projects where it's like a very personal one for me, like making selects and cutting things down. I've had to learn just to be really harsh with it myself. And it's not always the easiest thing to do. But yeah, I talked about this in a stream with another filmmaker and an illustrator, and we were talking about how one of the most important parts of your workflow should be getting opinions from other people and sharing your work. Say, hey, what do you think of this? Can you have a look through? Because having that outside eye and like a fresh brain to look at things is something that's so useful, especially when you've been like so focused on your edit and your project and you're so tunnel vision that you don't really see that, hey, that clip doesn't need to be there. Right. It's not really adding anything. And I think another way you can help with that is, again, ask yourself, like, what does this add to my final edit? Like, do I really need this here? Yes, I love it. Like, it makes me happy, but the people watching it aren't going to know that that's why that's there. So if it's not adding anything, then you can remove it. But yeah, I think getting other people to give their opinion and sort of an honest opinion and sort of help you with those decisions, and just being, I guess, is it the word subjective or just realistic with yourself? You know, whether or not things do really need to be there. But it is definitely a challenge, I think.
Totally. Yeah. Gareth pointed out that the word I was looking for was subjective, at least from a personal point of view. Like from my personal point of view, it's subjective to like this or that clip or this or that shot. But looking at it from a third person view or from other person's view, like a general view, it might not make sense. So that's a good attitude to approach and to tackle these kind of tasks. So speaking of workflow and organizing your timeline and generally your work, I can see that your timeline looks sweet, right? It is colored, it is named. Man, I wish I was so tidy in my timeline. I'm taking a lot of heat sometimes from friends and colleagues. You know, I try to do better, but sometimes I just get into the creative juice and whatever.
Yeah.
So like one of the features that just came out seems like it's made for me, you know, like the simplify sequence feature. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, and also about sequences in general. Like I see you have some markers that are colored and named, and how you can do that maybe. Not necessarily related to simplify sequence, but I just think it's very important to show these things, colorizing clips as well as markers and defining lengths, so you have a visual overview of what you have in your timeline.
Yeah, for sure. I think visual overview is a very good word. You know, I have a very visual brain, as probably a lot of other creatives do as well. So realizing that I kind of need to see things in order to understand them, as opposed to just sort of having them in writing or like explained, is a huge benefit. So I use these markers along the top here. You can see that was for me to kind of visualize the breakdown of the segments of the reel. Like obviously you want your first 10 seconds to be some of your best clips and like the kind of hook. And then the next 30 seconds, I'd kind of broken down into a mixture of, again, good work from a variety of projects. And then I had the minute and 2 minute marks. And it just, again, lets me sort of, when I'm placing my clips, like I say, like I'm ordering my clips and trying to figure out where they go, it lets me kind of put them in the right spots in the sequence and gives me an idea of how much space I have left to fill up if I want to hit like a 2 minute mark. So they're really useful. And I mean, I can run through how to do that after we've maybe played around with the Simplify Sequence tool. And the same with coloring the clips again here. I like to color all of my clips. I usually do that in the selects stage of the process. So I have a select. What I tend to do is I import my footage and then I'll create a select sequence and I'll put everything that I have for this project into that sequence. So there's a lot of clips in this one. It's not usually this much. But what I've done is I've color coded each clip per project, or I guess this is motion graphics work. We've got this is food and beverage, probably. Yeah, that's food and beverage. So kind of each kind of theme, sports, people, and I guess this is like drone shots. But again, you can color those really easy if you have your keyboard shortcuts set up, which I do. Actually, I'm editing a Skillshare class at the moment, which is all about Premiere workflow and efficiency and sort of setting up your keyboard to help you work faster. Keyboard shortcuts is a whole lesson in there. But for me, I have them set to my numbers. So I can just select these clips as I'm going through and I can press 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc., etc. And it just changes the colors really quickly. And it gives you just, again, like a really great visual overview of what you're working on and where kind of each sort of type of footage is. And then again here, that transfers over. So I know that's a drone shot there because it's orange. I've got food and beverage here. And like, just to sort of make sure I've got a nice variety as the clip or the video rolls on, you know, through the sequence, just kind of visually represented, I guess. But simplify sequence, let's talk about that. So what we have here is I've made a copy of my real sequence and I've messed it up a little bit more just to sort of exaggerate. But the simplify sequence tool essentially kind of does exactly what it says on the tin. It lets you to create a new, cleaner version of a sequence. It can help you to remove the gaps between clips, delete empty tracks, remove unwanted clips, all sorts of things, and it does it all automatically. So all you need to do to access it is go up here to the toolbar, go down to sequence, and then select, where is it? Now I'm going to lose it. Simplify sequence.
Down.
Am I going crazy? Here we go, right there.
there.
It's always the way, like when you're trying to show someone how to do something, you completely forget how to show them how to do it.
I know the feeling.
So you just click simplify sequence, and then it brings up this little window here. So you can see it says it creates a duplicate sequence and simplifies it based on the options below. So it offers to give you a name. So we'll just leave it as simplify sequence 1 simplified. And then you have all these tick boxes here. So the first one is obviously close vertical gaps on video tracks. So I guess all that would do is, if you see we have this gap here, it would either delete the empty tracks and also bring clips down to the lowest space available when you select it. So I guess this one here would be brought all the way down to fill in that gap. And flatten multi-camera clips. Again, we don't have any multi-camera clips in this sequence, but all that would do is when you, I guess, turn a sequence into a multi-camera sequence or clip, it lets you have obviously the choices between all the different camera shots sort of on one track. And all that would do, I guess, is sort of flatten that down and I guess make it back to a regular sequence. I could be incorrect. I haven't tested it on a multi-camera sequence yet. Maybe we can do that in a minute. I do have some of those in another project. But primarily here are your main options. So you can see you can remove empty tracks, you can remove graphics, transitions through edits. You can have disabled or muted tracks removed for your audio, disabled clips. So again, they can be removed, offline clips. And this one here, which I find really, really interesting, is you can remove clips of a label. That kind of goes back to the process here where we have all of the clips labeled with colors. And say I decided that I didn't want any of the drone shots to stay in the sequence, I could literally choose, I think it was orange, which was drone shots, remove clips of the label, mango, sorry.
Of course, mango.
Of course, it's mango. And it would take all of those out. So let's actually try that now. Let's try and get rid of this color here because there's a bit more of those around, which is rose. And we're also going to close vertical gaps and remove any empty tracks. And we want it to be applied to audio and video tracks. So we're going to select both and let's just press simplify. And it just takes a few seconds. And you can see there that it's removed. Has it removed all of the, did I select the correct color here? Let's see.
You have to select the sequence.
Should have been, okay, so okay, yeah. So we have, okay, perfect. So we're just in the wrong one, that's all. So yeah, you can see if we go between the two, all of those rose clips are gone. All of those gaps have been closed up. And like I said here, this clip here, which was up here, it's been brought down to the lowest track available in space. And it's just cleaned everything up. And also, if we don't want any of these gaps here, for this part here, we can also use the close gaps tool, which is super, super useful. You just need to select the footage, the clips that you want, go to sequence, close gap, and it should rip or delete all of those gaps wherever there's not obviously not something blocking it. So obviously here we have the audio track, and that's going to get in the way of closing those other gaps. I think if we lock it though, it should let us close all of the other gaps as well. Don't hold me to this, I could be wrong. I was wrong. That happens sometimes. If I move the audio track out of the way, then obviously it would still let us close the gaps. But that's another really useful tool. Before they brought that feature in, it was quite an arduous process to sort of close all of the gaps in your sequence.
Yeah, you can always have like, if you don't have snapping turned on, it could be always like this 1 or 2 frame blackness, that you see because you shifted something and then you didn't have the snapping feature on, and then you have that, which is really annoying. And if you have a longer timeline, so we're talking more than 2, 3, 4, or 5 minutes maybe, or even longer than that, then it's a real pain to find that visually at least.
Yeah, for sure. It's a super useful tool. So we'll quickly try and play around with it again. We'll just see how it works with some of the other settings. So one of the ones that I noticed actually that was really good was it allowed you to remove transitions and graphics. So I think one of the ways you could use this is, say you've been, you have a few different examples of a sequence and you're trying out maybe a few different styles or edits and just things that might work. But you think, you know what, I don't like this. I want to start again. I want to start from scratch, but I don't want to have to move all of my clips or sort of, delete everything or do it manually. Having a ton of transitions here would take quite a while. Like say, I mean, this is quite a short sequence, but if you had like a 10, 15 minute sequence with like tons of edits in it, you're going to be sitting here selecting and deleting manually for ages. And if you have like 10, 15 sequences, you're going to multiply that time by even more. And it's just, it's time spent doing things that you really don't need to be doing. So we can just do this. We can go to, again, simplify sequence, video tracks and audio tracks, and we're going to remove transitions here. And let's see how the graphics as well. Is it only Premiere graphics, legacy titles? In fact, let's also mute this track and disable this track and just show how that feature works too. So we can go to simplify sequence. We want to remove disabled or muted tracks, clips, and transitions, and then press. We don't want to do that anymore. Simplify. And wow, look at that. It's cleaned everything up. So it's removed all of those transitions across all of those clips. So they're all fresh and untransitioned now. And it's also removed that track there, the audio track that was muted, and also taken away those two tracks in the middle. Let's put them next to each other like this. And you can see how it's gone from that to that, which is just incredible.
Now, I want to stress out one important point that you mentioned. That is like super helpful. If like, imagine you have like your reel is a good example, like your portfolio, and you always get the work that you advertise for, right? So I used that example in the past, but a friend of mine did a lot of car commercials, CG cars and all that stuff, and he was fed up with it, and he kept getting those requests, to do this commercial, do that commercial, because his reel and his portfolio and his website was full of car work. So once he took that out, and put in more abstract stuff that he wanted to do, he got more inquiries to do more abstract stuff and less or no car stuff. So as long as you have that in, you will get requests. So imagine, let's say you're fed up with, I don't know, fashion stuff, right? You don't want to do fashion stuff. Or let's say you want to cold call a client, say like, hey, here's what I do, but you don't want to have any fashion in there. Then you could use that particular feature, color coded, fashion, I don't know, it was purple or whatever. And you say, get rid of all the purple stuff. And then you have a fresh timeline where you actually have only the work in there that you wanted. So this is like a very realistic and good example of how to use this feature, other than just simplifying it.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to say one more way it could be really useful is if you're handing work off to another editor, or another person to work on a project. And for me, like, I don't want to send it. I would never send this to another editor, because for a start, I know they'd probably throw it straight back at me and be like, what are you doing? They'd be disgusted with me. So I could spend time cleaning this up manually, or I could simplify it using that tool and then be like, here you go, here's a nice clean sequence, everything's in order. I mean, an example again is when I'm making selects, right? A lot of the time I'll be scrubbing through the footage really quickly, and I'll just quickly drag anything that I like. I'm like, okay, I want to use that clip. I want to use that clip. And I'll put them onto a second track. And that for me is just like a visual indicator of these are the clips that I want. So then saying, okay, now that everything's on this track here, I could just mute that track, hide it and delete, simplify it, and just be left with the clips that I want. And it would also close the gaps, right? And markers as well, there's one quickly, we'll move on to the color very shortly, but you can also remove markers here, right? So you can see, gives you this option. We'll get rid of all of that, but you can remove sequence markers. So to do that manually, again, is a real pain. Like if I'm using markers a lot in a sequence, there could be hundreds of them. And to get rid of those is a real pain. But if I just want to remove certain colors, like I can get rid of green here and press simplify, it's going to get rid of all of those green markers that were originally there. So that, again, just super useful way to clean up for handoffs, for refinements to projects, or just for starting again from scratch, but keeping the clips in there. So so really, really awesome tool.
It's in line with the saying, work smarter, not harder. And also Sandrine has a very good point. She said it can be also useful for removing NDA-based projects. For example, if you color-coded NDA-based projects that you're not allowed to show publicly or not yet, then you can also use that, of course. So that's also a good idea. All right, so we talked so much about color, but we didn't see any color really. No, what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I do. I know. I think we should. I think we should move on to the color now. So let's get rid of all of these lovely sequences here, and let's get into some color. So let's get back to, at the start, I mentioned some of the color updates. So we have, first and foremost, the color space detection. So on import and export, Premiere should automatically now detect and apply the correct color space to footage. I think it was the H.264 and HEVC formats that it specifically applies this to now, which is super useful. So it should now mean, I'm just getting to, so let me get to the actual release notes here. Yes, it also supports mirrorless cameras, modern mirrorless cameras, and current iPhones. So it should interpret the footage with the correct color space and import and export, which means that it's now should match across your whole project, which is superb. I don't know, I'm not going to lie, I'm not the most up to date on your codecs and your color spaces. Obviously, I know how they work, but
it's a rabbit hole.
Exactly, it's a rabbit hole, and I'm not going to go into it, but you guys should look into that because I think it's definitely going to make some improvements to your workflow. But something I do know about is vector scopes and curves, and obviously we have some updates to the vector scopes. We now have colorization for our YUV vector scope here, which is awesome. So I will actually run through how these scopes kind of work in a moment, but let me try and find a clip of a little bit more color in it so you can actually see it in action. Essentially, this is a color hue wheel, and these pixels here represent the various colors and saturation on the footage. And obviously, the further out from the center it is, the more saturated that color is. So what's happened now is that we have the colors actually represented on the pixels, whereas before it was just a quite plain white pixel. And obviously, it's a lot harder to visualize when you can't see the colors. It's also become a lot more detailed. Like before, there was a lot less sort of, it just looks a lot nicer and crisper to me, which is great. But before we get into that, we also have some updates to the curves here. So these are your curves, your RGB curves, and your hue and saturation curves. And they work a lot like the curves in Lightroom and Photoshop. And they just let you, let me just mute that, apply and adjust your midtones, highlights, and your whites and blacks. But what the difference is now is that you can drag this out and it gets bigger. Whereas before, you were kind of restricted to this small little square here. And it was kind of hard if you really want to get in and like, you know, make some really accurate adjustments. It was kind of like, you'd have to get your binoculars out, you know, but this is actually a really, really cool update. You know, being able to just even maximize it and have it full screen is just great. You know, it's just super, super useful, especially when you're getting in those like real intense little minute changes that you're trying to make for a color grade. So I really love that. So we're going to go through now. I'm going to go through a few clips and actually apply the color grade, apply a quick color grade to them. And as we're doing it, I'm going to run through each of these vector scopes or waveforms, give a kind of quick breakdown of how they work. Because a lot of time, a question I get asked is how do you actually use these scopes and waveforms? So hopefully that should be quite useful.
Let me quickly chime in here, just briefly, because I was chatting to Gareth before that. He was asking for some After Effects stuff today, and I said we have a pretty packed schedule with Premiere Pro and all things. But I was teasing him by saying that some of the stuff that you will be showing is also very easily transferable to After Effects or technically any other tool, really, because it's just common, like it should be common knowledge of how to color grade. You know, there's two ways to color grade. And I'm sure you're going to talk about that. Is like, one is like the visual, actually seeing the result. The other is, I don't want to say numerical, but more like value based in terms of the actual description of the color values. Sure. And ideally you use both, use your eye as well as the values. And since you have the Lumetri panel also in After Effects, you can of course apply certain things, most of these things actually also in After Effects, for example.
100%, yeah. I mean, we have the program monitor here, which is obviously showing the clip that we're trying to grade, and we use that in conjunction with the scopes next to us. So this gives us a very visual and sort of, I guess, it can be subjective if you're looking at this, because obviously not everyone's eye is going to be perfectly color. But what do you call it when you correct your screen? You know, the thing I'm talking about. Calibrated. Yeah, calibrated. Yeah, not everyone's eyes are going to be, and also your screens are going to be different.
Yeah.
The room you're in is going to affect how you perceive stuff. So what these scopes here do is give you a very unbiased and obviously numerical way to measure these sort of values you're trying to edit. And it allows you to sort of match things up and just make sure that you are sort of not just basing it off of what you think you like or what you see. You know, it allows you to do it correctly and numerically. And again, like I said, they are also available in After Effects. So yeah, so we have here, actually, so what the scopes, yeah, like I said, the scopes allow you to accurately evaluate the color and brightness levels of our videos in a visual and numerical way. So what we have here is the Luma waveform, and the process of color grading is kind of in 3 steps for me in my head anyway. You know, the first thing you want to do is your color corrections, and all that is correcting your footage to bring it back to how it would have looked naturally. You're not putting anything stylistic on it. You're not making it look fancy. You're literally trying to match it to how it looked when it was shot. Obviously, each camera can have its different codecs and can compress footage in a different way or apply its own little in-camera edits. So essentially, you're just trying to correct the footage. If the white balance is off, if the exposure is off, you're trying to bring it back to its natural levels and make it look natural. And I mean, these clips here, I think most of them were shot in a drone. I do have some log footage somewhere hiding, which I'll find, which is a lot more natural. But let's find a nice clip we can do some exposure. In fact, let's go to the log footage, which should be here. So this was shot in Canon log, so it's a lot more flat and neutral. And let's take that into the color space. And you can see here, so this waveform shows your, I guess it shows the exposure levels of the pixels in an image. From left to right here along this axis, we have the image visually represented. So you can see, if I move, you can kind of see where my hands and body are here. And on this axis here, we have 0, which represents black, and 100, which represents white. So if we adjust the exposure in the basic correction panel here, we push that exposure up, you can see the pixels are moving closer towards 100, which is the white. And then if we push it too high, you can see we have what we call clipping, which is where it's exceeding 100 or going over like the white balance. And it's just kind of, we're losing data essentially because we've overexposed. We're going to lose saturation and contrast, etc. So you don't want that. For me, I like to sort of have it sitting here around the midtones. So I'll just bring up the exposure a touch, maybe like 1 stop. And then I'll push these whites up a little bit here. You can see, and again, you can compare between the two, how the changes are happening visually and numerically. And then we'll bring the blacks down a little bit just to bring some contrast in. And again, the same thing here, like if you push the blacks down too far, they're going to hit this bottom line here and they're going to clip. And I'm clamping that signal, so it's sort of, you don't really need to see below here, but you can see it's going past that line, and we're going to lose data in areas like here. We're going to lose like detail. We won't be able to see any of like the hair. We're going to lose detail here, and we don't want that. So we bring that back up. We make sure that it doesn't clip. And you can also add a little bit of contrast if you like, just to put a bit more dynamic range in. And yeah, if we can bring that, turn it off. You can see it's gone from very flat and neutral to already quite a nice bit of contrast and dynamic range. So that's how you would want to use the Luma panel. We're going to go back to the other sequence here and start to grade these clips. In fact, actually, no, you know what? I lied. I'm going to go back to this one. And so once you've done your sort of exposure and adjusted your tones, the next step would be to add in your white balance or correct your white balance. And the reason you do that is because if you do your white balance first, and then you adjust your exposure and contrast and tones, you're actually going to throw the white balance out of whack. So it doesn't make sense to do your white balance, then your exposure, and then go back and do your white balance again. So there is a kind of a process to it. And when you want to adjust your white balance, the scope that's going to be really useful is your RGB parade. So we're going to right click here, get the RGB parade up, close the Luma waveform. And what we have here is 3 channels. It's very similar to the Luma waveform, but we have a red channel, a green channel, and a blue channel. And it works in the same way, 100 to 0. And what I'll show you now is how adjusting this affects each channel. So if we move towards the colder end of the temperature, you can see the blue channel is going to increase and the red channel is going to decrease. And the green kind of floats around and goes up and down. And then if we adjust the tint, You can see the green channel goes down as we move over to the magenta. And if we increase the green tint, the green channel goes up and the blue and the red go down. So essentially what we want is to kind of balance the three of these out and have them kind of level. And you can see here, there's not too much that needs to be changed. So we're just going to have a little play around here and try and find a point like maybe this point here and see how it looks if we can level them all out at the top. So when you change this, which is the temperature, the tint is also going to change slightly. So we're a little bit cold here, which might not be exactly how we want it to look, but if we put a little bit more magenta in it, it balances it out. And again, put the warmth in. And to me, that kind of looks nice. But we're going to correct that in the next one. Something else that was really useful for me actually is when I first started to learn, I mean, I'm not a professional grader by any means, but when I first started to grade, I would spend a lot of time really trying to perfect the grading, like have it look perfect according to the graphs, your scopes and waveforms. And like initially I would have made sure that these three here were perfectly on that line. I would have spent forever and ever trying to get them to balance out and, you know, look amazing, but then it might not look right in the image because one, not everything's always going to match up, and two, you're never ever going to be able to make anything look perfectly balanced. So I think you need to have a little bit of leeway with it, which you can see here, right? Like I don't personally like the look of that when it is kind of balanced. I think it's too cold. So I actually want to drag a bit more warmth into it. But if it was a clip that was really, really out of balance, I mean, this one was shot under controlled lighting, so it's sort of, you know, a bit easier to balance. But what you're generally looking for here is, say if you had a clip that looked like this, and it was just way out of whack, disregard how this looks, but you'd know for a start that one, it was way too warm and there was probably way too much green tint in it. And it would just let you to visually be like, okay, cool, I can assess this. I know it's not balanced, and just sort of bring it back into a good ballpark of what might look kind of normal. And once you've done that, the next step would be to play around with your saturation, and sort of here you can sort of change your colors a little bit more. This is kind of the correction on a basic level done. You know, you've done your exposure and tone, and now you've balanced out the whites, and then you want to move on to your YUV vector scope, which is where you're going to do your sort of color and general balance. And the way that this works is, first of all, this is essentially a hue color wheel. So imagine you have a color wheel painted in behind this. You've got your red here, your magenta, your blue, your cyan, your green, and your yellow. And the further away from the center these these colorized pixels are, represents how saturated each color is. So say I push the saturation here all the way up. Obviously, we've got a lot of orange and yellow and red in this image. So you can see as I push that up, it increases the distance from the center. But not only that, it also shows us, again, we can sort of judge tint. So if we push all the way over to magenta on the tint, it obviously moves all the pixels over here, and they also get colorized. So you can see that that color's quite saturated in this shot. I mean, it's very saturated. And the same for the temperature. It moves over to the orange and red or to the blue. And it just gives a really good visual representation of where all of the colors or the pixels in your image align. But we also have a few other things. So we have the skin tone line here. And this line here, which I'm going to maximize, actually is where you want the skin tone. If you're shooting a subject or a person, regardless of race or ethnicity, this is the line that their skin tone, or the pixels that represent their skin tone, need to lie to be sort of true to real life. So that's a really valuable tool if you're sort of working with like interview shots or headshots and you need to sort of correct that area of the image. And we also have these boxes here, and these represent the broadcast safety levels for saturation. So if you're editing something that's going to be used on TV or broadcast, you want to make sure that your saturation is within these bounds. So just sort of really useful tool to sort of, yeah, like you say, visually and numerically assess your grade. Yes. So let me just, one other tool we haven't quickly gone over is the curves. So let's go back into the fun clips here. We'll run through a quick grade on maybe this clip here has got a bit of color in it, I think. I want something, oh no, we'll do this one here. this one can be fun. We'll go into the Limitri panel, bring up the Luma waveform. We'll quickly push some exposure into that, push some whites into it, push the blacks down a bit, a little bit of contrast, maybe bring, do we want the shadows out? Let's bring the shadows out. Push the highlights down because we want more color here. And that will do for now. We'll check the white balance. And it looks like it's a bit cold, but the graph is saying it's not. So you can see again, like here, like the graphs aren't always going to be 100% accurate. I mean, it's accurate, but it might not always, you know, matching according to the graph. The white balance especially isn't always going to produce something that you think is visually pleasing. So for this, I would really not tweak it too much. I'll just push a little bit of warmth into it. But let's go over to the YUV vector scope. Hide that, and let's have a play around with these updated curves here. So let's see, I feel like we need to push this. I don't have enough space. I need more monitors, really. That's what I need. It's always a useful thing to have when you're color grading. So what we're going to do is bring down the shadows here. And even though we can adjust them in this basic correction panel here, what you might want to do actually is do your correction here and then use these curves in the creative panels to do your stylistic changes. So once you've corrected it, that's when you would then add things like maybe your presets, like your LUTs or some like tints. This is where you do the artistic changes, right? So something that I actually like to do before I put any artistic changes on is create an adjustment layer and use that to apply any of my sort of artistic changes. So you can do that here, go to your project panel, click new item, adjustment layer, make sure it's the right dimensions, press OK. We'll call this color gray. And you can drag and drop that into a track above your clips. And then use that to apply the artistic changes. All that does is mean you can switch them on and off and see before and after, and it just means that everything's kind of kept separate, which is a really useful way to kind of do things, I think. Keep them nice and separated. So yeah, let's put some play around with this a bit. We push the midtones out. We want highlights. We want to bring the highlights down, and I mean, it's not perfect, but it's something. And like we said, we can obviously maximize these now, make them full screen and adjust them and drag them out to really be a bit more sort of accurate when you're dropping those pins and trying to change the curves. Maybe let's push a little bit of red into the midtones here. Just have a little bit of a tint on it and take some green out of the midtones, maybe. Let's see. And I mean, that's not how I would, that's not how I'd want the end product to look, but you can see how using those curves, you can add your own stylistic little changes. Everyone has a different eye when it comes to what looks good and what doesn't. Taking those off, you've got a much more natural looking shot. But say you were using this shot in a movie or a short film and you wanted to add like a mood to the shot, maybe you wanted it to look really cold. You could add some blues in, just sort of give a blue tint to the whole thing.
Charles, how much do you use the color wheels opposed to the curves? And
yeah, so again, it really depends on the shot. Sometimes I do a really basic look and just use the basic correction and like a very little bit of the other options. But when I'm editing shots like this here, actually with like whites in it, the color wheels are really useful to add sort of, let's hide that. You can kind of add, you know, some nice tints. So these color wheels here work, they separate the midtones, the shadows and the highlights, and they let you add sort of stylistic, again, tints to each of those sections of the image. So those are the midtones there. You can also push the midtones up, drag them down. And again, here are the shadows. This is really good actually for adding a split look. So a lot of people like to go for the, the teal, orange and teal kind of like look to the image. And this is probably how you'd want to do that. Sometimes it can be a bit too much. It's a very broad sort of edit or adjustment that you're making with this. and it doesn't always work for every clip, but you know, if you're doing it very subtly, obviously the further away from the center you get, the more saturated that tint is going to be. So if you just want to add like a small amount of blue into the highlights, or maybe a little bit more warmth into the midtones, it's a super useful way to do it. And you also have this comparison view here. So if you want to match two shots, or at least try and get them to look kind of similar, what you can do is, let's say, okay, let's try and match these two shots here. So we've got our reference shot here, which we're going to have graded there. Then we've got this shot here, which is the one we're going to add the comparison view match to. So you literally have, make sure you have your clip selected. That's your reference, you apply match, and it's going to adjust the midtones, highlights, and shadows to try and kind of match the two shots together. So that's the before, and that's the after. And you can see here, we've got a lot more blue, I think, in like the midtones here. So what it's done there is dragged that over, and I think it's put a little bit more warmth in the highlights. But I do think that's done a pretty good job. If you're looking at the white balance and overall look of that shot,
Totally, yeah.
I think it's matched them really well.
And this is super important for continuity reasons. For example, if you do work on a commercial or a film, and you use multiple, you know, input sources like drone shots combined with, I don't know, you know, different camera manufacturers or different, maybe even different lighting situations, but you still want to make sure that everything is cohesive, at least visually cohesive, and makes sense storytelling wise. So that's why it is important to make sure that the actual look or the color in general matches from shot to shot.
Oh, 100%, yeah. It's really important for the continuity. And there's one other tool actually that I'll quickly mention before we get on to the remix. And this is particularly useful when we're talking about this skin tone line here, right? So obviously at the moment we have all of the different pixels for the color of the shot in the YUV vector scope, but you can isolate those using this tool here, this HSL Secondary, and it lets you key out a specific color and mask it, and then just make adjustments to that color on its own. So using the dropper tool here, we can select my face, and what it's done here is got the hue, saturation, and luminance, and it's set ranges for those according to that color. So you can do this here, tick this box, and it's going to mask out everything else, and you can just see it's just isolated what's been selected. So you might want to tweak this a bit, you know, increase the range, and obviously bring in a bit more of whatever you're trying to mask. So if we change the saturation here, we can increase the range of the saturation. Bring in some more of my face. And I think really what the problem is here is the luminance isn't broad enough. So you can see, okay, that range there, it's darker. So we want to sort of bring that out. And I think maybe the saturation, we need to find that side of my face where it's hiding. Do that, and then maybe the color.
Maybe pick it again.
We can add to it with this tool here. There we go. Perfect. And then if I want to remove this color here, that doesn't work. So it's kind of a hard one, really.
Now you can play with the luminance and saturation, I think.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, the problem here is the color of the background is very similar to the color of my skin tone. So it's going to be a difficult one to sort of fix, but we can always mask it out. And you would use a mask,
yeah.
Yeah, we can always add an opacity mask and just sort of isolate.
Yeah.
Oh, if I don't do it correctly. Let's delete that mask, add a little mask here, and just do it very quick, sort of just around my face. We'll forget about my hands for now. And there we go. So we've just got that section of my face, and we go back to this here. And now we've isolated that, we can denoise the mask. So that just sort of increase the size of this so you can see what's going on a bit better. Yeah, we can denoise the mask to sort of localize the masking, and also blur it again to sort of remove just like any empty patches. But now we've done that, we've got a color wheel here, so we can push that up or down. And we can also adjust this here. And if you keep an eye on this vector scope, before I made that adjustment, this is the skin tone, the pixels representing my skin tone, right? And we want them to be on this line. So they're just off of it, and we can change it using the temperature here, which actually we're not going to do. We can change the tint if the tint's off. So pushing it over to the green side moves it away from the line. So we know we want a bit more magenta in it. So let's bring that over just slightly. And we can also use this wheel to make those same adjustments And again, it's saturation. You can see here how easy it is to kind of keep it on that line using the wheel, but also adjust the warmth and tint at the same time. It's kind of like an all-in-one tool. We can sharpen, and we can also increase the saturation. As we increase the saturation, you see there it moves further out from the center. But
hey, Charles, Gareth was throwing out one. He said, "Come on, feel the noise."
Yeah, we'll put the noise all the way down. There we go. But yeah, that's obviously you might want to spend a bit more time cleaning that up. But we can go back to the actual general look of the shot. But now that should be. There you go. Look, I mean, if you take a look, you can see it's quite green there. Mm-hmm. And now it just looks a bit more natural. There's a bit more magenta in it and a little bit more warmth. But that's how visually your skin tone should lie. So now let's get on to Remix. I think we've got time to go over Remix briefly.
Yeah, we have 5 more minutes.
Let's go on to the Remix tool. Okay, cool. So to use this, we're going to jump into the beta, the Premiere Pro beta. Mm-hmm. Very exciting place. And what the Remix tool does is it intelligently rearranges songs so that the music matches the video. So instead of manually applying razor cuts and crossfades, all you have to do is select the clip, apply a tag to it, and remix, and then you can change the time and length of that clip to match your sequence or whatever it is you're working on, to whatever length you want it to be. Mm-hmm. And previously you'd have to go into Adobe Audition to do this. It was like a few more steps. You'd have to set up another project in Audition, make a mix, and sort of import the clips into there and then export them. And it was, it wasn't hard to do, but it was, it's a time-consuming process. So now all we need to do, we've got this sequence here with like a few clips in it. It's 22 seconds long. And we've got this music track here, which is, let's see, 1 minute 50. So all we're going to do is head over to the audio workspace. And we've got the essential sound panel here. We're going to select the clip and we're going to apply a tag to it, say it's music, which it is. And now that the Premiere knows it's music, we can change the duration. So we want to tick this box here. And you can see we've got the target duration here. And we want to make it to 22 seconds. So we just literally type in 0, 22, 0, and then we that. And if you want to make sure as well you've got the remix button selected, because otherwise it's going to stretch the track and slow it down. But you saw how quickly that happened. That was literally a second, if that. And what we've got now is this audio track. Let's stretch this out and maximize this. You can see this audio track has been reduced, and we've got these little zigzags here, which show where it's it's basically remixing the track. It's cutting out segments, analyzing using, I think it's Adobe Sensei? Is that what it's called? Sensei?
Yeah, it's Sensei. I don't know if Sensei is at work at Remix, but yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is.
And it's analyzing the track and seeing where each segment is, and like the intro, the outro, and the middle parts, and it's replacing them and repeating them in a really, really sort of seamless way. So if we play through, you can't hear where the cuts are. You wouldn't know that that's just been trimmed and cut down. I can also adjust a bunch of settings on this. So we have the edit length and features like the timbre and harmonics, and changing these. So obviously this is quite a short edit. So if we let the AI know that it's going to be a short edit, let's put it down to that, then it will remix it in a different way. It might sort of reduce the intro time, the outro time, and increase the length of time that it applies to maybe the middle section. So here, it's only tweaked it slightly. You can see it's changed the areas where it cuts. And if we play through, so it's brought in more of the track from later along, because it knows that it's got less time to create that remix. And then it cuts straight to the outro or the end of the clip there, I guess. And then it fades out. So when we had it if we set it to long, it's probably going to have the intro, like a half beat of the middle of the track, and then the outro, which isn't really going to be, that useful. And then here, the timbre and harmonics, this always catches me out. So I never remember which one is which, but essentially it's telling it to bring in more timbre. So one is like, I'm not a music graduate, but different aspects of the track, I guess, is it's telling it you want to bring in. So we can also quickly show you here. We've got much longer clips here.
Tim has the explanation. Timbre versus harmonics is important if you have a lot of percussions and drums versus lots of smooth melodic aspects.
Perfect. That's what I was going to say.
It's also Timsey. It's not just sensei, but Timsey.
Timsey. Oh, there you go. Yes, it is Timsey. So I'll quickly show you here how it works if you want to expand length of a track. So we've got this clip here, very intense track. And we have this section here, which is this is 13 minutes long. So let's see how it tackles that. Let's remix this track, set the duration. It's analyzing it here. We want it to be 13 minutes and 35 seconds. And I think with the longer tracks like this is really where these kind of features here come into play and like changing the style of the track. But we can see it's put a lot of cuts in there. We've got an intro, we've got an outro, and hopefully sounds, I'm not going to watch. Oh, it's very loud. Apologies to anyone's ears. And the cuts are here. So it's looped. There you go. I mean, the cut there was seamless. You didn't even notice it. And it's taken that segment and just looped it over and over until it gets to a point where it deems the outro is ready to cut in. But super quick, super easy, and really, really useful when you've edited a video and your audio track's a bit too long or a bit too short, and you don't have to manually sit there and cut and sort of repeat segments and make it fade in and fit it all together. Does it for you in like a click of a finger. So really, really great tool, I think. Super
Fantastic. Man, Charles, that was a whirlwind of information and knowledge that you just spilled on us. I really enjoyed it. One of the things that I also enjoy about not just being a guest on Adobe Live, but also being a host is being able to learn things myself. Obviously being open to learn new things. And even if you know, like a lot of it that you showed, it's still like, this is the way that Charles does it, that adds on top of how I can do things better. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of the guests that are watching, might feel the same, although they might know bits and pieces of things that you showed and explained. Seeing the general workflow and your approach on things might add to your own personal workflow, just to become a better artist. And I think it was very entertaining and very well explained. So thank you so much. And where should people follow you? Is it rather Instagram or YouTube or both? And maybe they can reach out to you if they have further questions or.
Yeah, for sure. You can follow me on Instagram. It's Wondergasm. So it's WANDERGASM. And you can get hold of me there. That's all right. I tend to hang out. But yeah, thank you so much for coming to listen to me talk for the last hour. And yeah, it's been really good hanging out and talking about the things that I love. So thank you.
Absolutely. I hope to see you again. And I definitely will be in touch. I need to share a few things with you as well. So thanks everyone for being fantastic guests and a fantastic audience with a very exciting chat. And all that you get is some great feedback. Joe loves it, said it was an interesting stream, excellent stream. Stuart loves it. So very positive feedback. I just wanted to give it back to you. So because you were talking to the void, and so it was very well received. So thank you all, and stay safe and healthy. And I hope to see you sometime soon, and have a wonderful weekend, everyone.